Madam Deputy Speaker, on Friday, the Department of Justice in the United States released around 3 million pages from the case files relating to Jeffrey Epstein. It is increasingly clear that his awful crimes involved and were facilitated by many, often powerful people, both by actively participating in those crimes, but also by failing to hear those victims' voices, by equating wealth with integrity, and by not using one's privileged position to speak out, even against a friend. Contained within the release by the US Department of Justice were documents which highlighted the close nature of the relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson, including alleged financial transactions when Peter Mandelson was a Labour Member of Parliament and later Minister. For the avoidance of doubt, this information was not known by the government until the release of documents by the Department of Justice on Friday. The nature of the documents also raised serious concerns about Peter Mandelson's behaviour whilst a minister. Peter Mandelson must account for his actions and conduct. It is an understatement, Madam Deputy Speaker, to say that his decision to continue a close relationship with a convicted paedophile, including discussing private government business, falls far below the standards expected of any minister. His behaviour was unequivocally wrong and an insult to the women and girls who suffered. As the House knows, Peter Mandelson is no longer a member of the Labour Party, having resigned his membership last night, and the House may wish to know that disciplinary action was underway by the Labour Party prior to his resignation. The Prime Minister believes, as does the government, that Peter Mandelson should not retain his membership of the House of Lords or use his title.
The crimes of Jeffrey Epstein were truly terrible. Paedophilia, sex trafficking, child prostitution. It was an awful abuse of power. And it is, of course, a great embarrassment to our country that its most senior ambassador should have been caught up with a man like him. In this latest set of releases from the US Department of Justice, it's clearer than ever that theirs was a relationship built not just on affection, but on the transfer of money from Epstein to Mandelson's family, and the transfer of information from Mandelson to Epstein. In some cases, this was apparently market-sensitive information that Mandelson only received by dint of being a member of the Labour government. So, of course, we welcome the belated announcement that there will be an investigation into Mandelson's conduct whilst he was a minister. But this should have happened long ago, and I say that because we know that in February last year, Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, wrote to the Cabinet Secretary explicitly asking for an investigation into the veracity of information contained in the Epstein papers about the sale of assets arising from the banking collapse and communications about them between Lord Mandelson and Mr. Epstein. That investigation never happened. In any case, I'm afraid the investigation announced today alone will not do. It is not enough to consider Mandelson's historic conduct. There also needs to be an investigation into his behaviour whilst he was our ambassador in Washington. Given that he abused his previous position, it is entirely conceivable that he abused his most recent one. For example, I understand that on the 27th of February last year, Mandelson arranged for the Prime Minister to meet Palantir, a client of Mandelson's company, Global Counsel. How many more such meetings were there? What other information was shared? Likewise, the government cannot hide from its responsibility in having made Mandelson its ambassador in the first place. This was a political appointment. It happened only because of political pressure. And it seems very unlikely that the government's vetting system broke down entirely. Indeed, on the 10th of September, the Prime Minister told the House that full due process was followed during this appointment. Can it really be the case that this full due process did not pick up the extent of the relationship? So the question is, Madam Deputy Speaker, who in number 10 knew what and when? And the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister has a duty to tell this House precisely what the Prime Minister knew when he made the appointment, to disclose the documents that the Prime Minister saw. And if the Prime Minister genuinely did not know, well, somebody must have done. Who was it? Was it his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, who is reported to have personally pushed the appointment? It is time that someone took responsibility.
The person that has to take responsibility for their failings is Peter Mandelson. The Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster knows, because the process for political appointments, whether to ambassadorships or otherwise, was one that was set up under the previous Conservative government. It was a process that we inherited and have since updated. The Prime Minister has been very clear that the declarations of interest that were put forward by Peter Mandelson were not wholly truthful. When it became clear from the release of information that had not been the case, the Prime Minister moved swiftly to remove Peter Mandelson as the ambassador to the United States. On the first point that the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster made in relation to an investigation requested by former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, I can confirm to the House that his statement was incorrect. Former Prime Minister did ask the Cabinet Secretary to investigate, to look for any particular documents that related, as he said, to the sale of RBS assets to JP Morgan. That investigation was undertaken. The Cabinet Secretary did respond to the former Prime Minister to confirm that no documents in relation to these questions were held by the government. Evidently, now that more documents have become available to the public and to the government, further investigations are now taking place.
These files seem to show that Peter Mandelson was given £50,000 by a notorious paedophile, and a few years later, he sent on market-sensitive information to Epstein, who worked for JP Morgan, about market bailouts, the Prime Minister's resignation, telling them that they should mildly threaten the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and then told him about matters of national security. Surely this is not a matter of whether Peter Mandelson be in the House of Lords. This is a matter of whether the police should be involved.
The Honourable Lady is right that each individual issue is wholly unacceptable, and cumulatively it is also unacceptable. The undeclared exchange of funds, the passing on of government information, let alone the fact that those exchanges were to a convicted paedophile, are wholly unconscionable. And the House will know that if any of those activities were to take place today, ministers would be swiftly relieved of their duties and could be, via the recall petitions available to the House, removed from their constituency too. As to the matter of criminal investigations, of course that is a matter for the prosecution services and the police, and the investigation into the released documents from the Cabinet Secretary to the Prime Minister, as I've informed the House, is currently underway.
Madam Deputy Speaker, does the Minister think that the deep involvement of Mandelson with Epstein shows that Epstein's victims were not only women and girls, but may also have included young men?
It wouldn't be appropriate for me to entertain that hypothetical question at the dispatch box, Madam Deputy Speaker. We obviously hope that that is not the case, but as I say, I am not here to speak for Peter Mandelson.
I don't understand why the Minister, who I respect greatly, is standing there and speaking as though the government didn't know about the relationship and the connection between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein prior to appointing him as the ambassador to the United States. I can't understand why the Minister isn't standing at the dispatch box today saying that this House will sit until whatever hour is required in order to move legislation to strip him of his peerage. I cannot understand why the Minister is acting like the Labour Party have been proactive in relation to this when they have known for months about Peter Mandelson's revelations and yet have allowed him to maintain a party membership throughout that time. And I cannot understand why half an hour ago the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom did not just apologise for his decision making, his lack of judgment, and say that Peter Mandelson should be subject to a criminal investigation.
Neither the Labour Party nor the government, or indeed this House or the Honourable Member, knew about the information that was made available by the US Department for Justice only a matter of days ago. As soon as that information became available, the government has acted accordingly. And in respect of the previous decision of the Prime Minister to sack Peter Mandelson as the ambassador to the United States, the Prime Minister was very clear with this House and indeed the public that he did so quickly as soon as the extent and depth of the relationship became clear from the disclosure that took place. The Prime Minister relied information provided by Peter Mandelson at the time of his appointment. As soon as that information changed, the Prime Minister acted quickly and removed him from